I didn't believe the rules when I first read them, but I followed them anyway. And that's probably the only reason I'm still alive to explain what happened in that town. If you ever find yourself driving through southern Wyoming, and your GPS reroutes you through a place called Hartley, do yourself a favor and keep going. Even if your fuel light is on. Even if your engine starts making that soft ticking sound, that means something expensive is about to break. Because once you stop there, the decision to leave might not belong to you anymore. I reached Hartley just after sunset, which in hindsight was my first mistake. The sky still held that dim orange glow near the horizon, but the streets were already empty in a way that didn't feel normal. I don't mean quiet, I mean absent. No people, no cars, no movement behind windows. Even the wind seemed to move around the buildings instead of through them, like it was avoiding something. My car had been acting up for the last 30 miles. The temperature gauge crept higher than it should have, then dropped back down like it couldn't decide whether to fail now or later. I told myself I'd make it to the next town, but Hartley appeared before anything else did. Just a handful of buildings stretched along a 2-lane road, a gas station, a diner, and a row of houses set too far apart for comfort. The gas station lights were on. That was enough for me. I pulled in, killed the engine, and sat there for a second longer than necessary, hands still on the wheel, listening to the ticking under the hood. It sounded louder now that everything else was silent. Not city silent, not late-night quiet. This was something else entirely. The kind of silence that made small sounds feel like interruptions. The station itself looked old but maintained, a single pump island under a buzzing fluorescent canopy. Inside, a man stood behind the counter, watching me through the glass before I even opened the door. That should have been my second mistake. He wasn't surprised to see me. He looked like he had been waiting. When I stepped inside, the bell above the door didn't ring. I noticed that immediately, because I always notice that kind of thing. The man behind the counter nodded once, like we had already been introduced somewhere else. "You made it in before full dark," he said. I frowned. "Yeah, barely. You got coolant?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached under the counter and pulled out a folded sheet of paper, the edges worn like it had been handled too many times. He set it down in front of me. "You'll want to read this first," he said. I glanced at it, then back at him. "I just need coolant." "You'll want to read it," he repeated, calm but firm. There was something in his tone that made arguing feel unnecessary. Not threatening, just certain. Like the outcome didn't depend on whether I agreed. So I unfolded the paper. It was a list, numbered, simple font, nothing dramatic about it. Rule 1, do not go outside after dark for any reason. Rule 2, do not look out of any window between 10 o'clock p.m. and 4 o'clock a.m. Rule 3, if you hear knocking, do not respond. Rule 4, if you hear your name, it is not someone you know. Rule 5, keep all lights off unless absolutely necessary. Rule 6, if you see someone standing in the road at night, turn around immediately. Rule 7, if your reflection moves before you do, close your eyes and count to 10. Rule 8, if you break a rule, call the number on the back of this page. I let out a short breath that almost turned into a laugh. "What is this, some kind of local thing?" "No," he said. He didn't smile. I looked back down at the paper, then flipped it over. A phone number was written in pen, along with a time window underneath it. 3:15 a.m., 3:20 a.m. 5 minutes? I said. "That's when you can leave," he replied. "Leave what?" "The town." I stared at him, waiting for some sign that this was a joke. There wasn't one. His expression didn't change, not even slightly. "Look," I said, folding the paper halfway, "I just need coolant and maybe directions to the nearest motel." "You can stay at the Blue House," he said, like he hadn't heard me. "2nd Street on the left. Door will be unlocked." That's not how rentals usually work. It is here. Something in my chest tightened, just slightly. Not fear yet, Just that early instinct that something wasn't lining up the way it should. I tapped the paper. And this? If you ignore it, he said, you won't get another chance to follow it. That landed differently. Not louder, not more aggressive, just heavier. I folded the paper the rest of the way and slipped it into my jacket pocket without really deciding to. Coolant? I asked again. He turned, grabbed a bottle from a shelf, and set it on the counter. On the house. I hesitated. Why? Because you stopped here. That didn't answer anything, but I didn't push it. I paid anyway, left a few bills on the counter he didn't look at, and stepped back outside. The sky had gone fully dark, not gradually. It felt like it had dropped all at once while I was inside. I opened the hood, poured in the coolant, and tried not to think about the rules sitting in my pocket. It was easy to dismiss them under the fluorescent lights. Out here, with the roads stretching into blackness in both directions, they felt different. More possible. I finished, closed the hood, and looked down the road. For a second, I thought I saw something standing near the edge of the light. Not moving, just there. I blinked, and it was gone. Probably nothing, just shadows and distance playing tricks. That's what I told myself. I got back in the car and started the engine. It turned over smoothly now, like the problem had fixed itself just enough to get me moving again. I should have left right then. Instead, I turned left. The turn felt normal at first, just a narrow residential street, the kind you find in any small town, lined with modest houses and low fences that looked more decorative than functional. My headlights swept across empty porches and dark windows, each one reflecting back just enough light to remind me I was the only moving thing there. The blue house was exactly where he said it would be. 2nd Street, left side, faded paint that might have once been brighter, a small front yard with no car in the driveway and no lights inside. I pulled up to the curb and sat there for a moment, engine idling, staring at it. This was the part where a normal person would reconsider. Strange man, strange rules, unlocked house, everything about it lined up in a way that should have pushed me back onto the highway. But the road behind me felt longer than it should have, and the idea of driving back through that darkness with a car that had already started failing once didn't sit right either. So I made a decision that didn't feel like a decision at all. I grabbed my bag, stepped out, and walked up to the front door. It was unlocked. Of course it was. Inside, the house smelled faintly of dust and something older, like wood that had been sealed up for too long. I reached along the wall for a switch, hesitated, then remembered Rule 5. Keep all lights off unless absolutely necessary. I left them off. The only light came from the street behind me, spilling through thin curtains and stretching long shadows across the floor. Enough to see shapes, not enough to feel comfortable. The layout was simple. Small living room, couch against the wall, a narrow hallway leading deeper inside. No personal items, no photos, no signs that anyone actually lived there. Just a place waiting to be used. I closed the door behind me, and the latch clicked louder than it should have. For a few seconds, I stood there listening. Nothing. No footsteps outside, no voices, not even wind. Just that same heavy quiet. I set my bag down on the couch and pulled the folded paper from my jacket. The rules looked the same as before, but they felt different now that I was inside the town instead of passing through it. More specific, more relevant. I checked the time on my phone. 9:42 p.m. Less than 20 minutes until the first time window I wasn't supposed to look outside. That thought landed harder than it should have. I told myself I didn't believe any of it, but I still walked over to the nearest window and made sure the curtain was fully closed, just in case. The house had a bedroom at the end of the hall. I checked it quickly. Bed, dresser, nothing else. Same empty, staged feeling as the rest of the place. Whoever owned this house didn't live here. They prepared it for people like me. That realization settled in slowly, like something sinking through water. I went back to the living room and sat on the couch, phone in hand, scrolling through messages I wasn't really reading. Signal was weak. One bar flickering in and out, enough to load text, but not much else. At 9:58, I noticed myself watching the clock. At 9:59, I locked my phone without thinking. At 10 o'clock, the house felt different. Nothing changed physically. No sound, no movement. But the silence shifted, like it had tightened, like something had drawn closer without making a noise. Rule 2. Do not look out of any window between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. I leaned back into the couch and stared at the opposite wall. This is stupid, I muttered, just to hear something human. The sound of my own voice felt out of place. I picked my phone back up, opened a random video, and let it play at low volume, more for the company than the content. The flicker of the screen lit up my hands and the edge of the couch. Then I remembered Rule 5. Keep all lights off unless absolutely necessary. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen. Then I turned it off. The room dropped back into near darkness. Minutes passed, or maybe longer. Time didn't move the way it normally does when you're sitting in a dark room with nothing to focus on. It stretched, slowed, looped back on itself. Every small sound became something to analyze. The house settling, fabric shifting when I adjusted my weight, my own breathing. At some point, I realized I was listening for something specific without knowing what it was. And then I heard it. Knocking. 3 soft taps, somewhere near the front of the house. Not urgent. Measured. I froze. Rule 3. If you hear knocking, do not respond. I stayed still, eyes fixed on the dark outline of the door across the room. A few seconds passed. Then 3 more knocks, lower this time. The pattern registered immediately, like my brain had been waiting for it. 3, then 3 again. I swallowed, throat suddenly dry. Probably someone messing around, I whispered to myself, though I didn't believe it. No footsteps, no voice, just knocking. I shifted slightly on the couch, and the fabric made a faint sound under me. The knocking stopped, just like that. The silence that followed felt heavier than before, like it had been filled with something that was now paying attention. I held my breath without meaning to. A long second passed, then another. Nothing. Slowly, carefully, I exhaled. Nothing. The word had barely left my mouth when a single knock hit the door. Harder. Centered. Close enough that I could feel it through the floor more than hear it. Every instinct I had told me to get up and check, to confirm, to make it make sense. Instead, I stayed where I was. Rule 3. Do not respond. My eyes drifted, just slightly, toward the window beside the door. The curtain was thin. If I leaned a little, just enough, I stopped myself. Rule 2. Don't look. The thought came sharper this time. Not just a reminder, but a warning. I leaned back into the couch and stared straight ahead again, forcing my breathing to stay even. Seconds stretched. Then, from just outside the door, something spoke. It said my name. Not loudly, not distorted, just familiar. Close enough to someone I knew that my brain immediately started trying to place it. A friend, a relative, someone from work. The voice sat right on the edge of recognition, like a word you almost remember. Hey, it said softly, open up. My chest tightened. Rule 4. If you hear your name, it is not someone you know. I pressed my hands into my knees, grounding myself, focusing on something physical. Not real, I whispered. Not real. The voice didn't repeat itself, but it didn't leave either. I could feel it there, just beyond the door. In the same way you can feel someone standing too close behind you without turning around. Waiting. After what felt like minutes, the pressure eased. Not gone, just farther away. I stayed on the couch long after the knocking stopped, long after the voice faded, staring at the dark wall and listening to the house breathe. I didn't check the time. I didn't move, because somewhere between the first knock and that voice saying my name, something had shifted. I didn't understand the rules. I don't remember falling asleep. One minute I was sitting upright on the couch, staring into the dark and listening to the silence stretch across the house. And the next, I was waking up with my neck stiff and my phone pressed against my leg. The room had changed color. That was the first thing I noticed. Not brighter exactly, just less heavy. The kind of gray light that only shows up right before sunrise. For a second, everything felt normal. Then I remembered where I was. I sat up too quickly, the movement loud in the quiet room, and looked toward the door. It was still closed. No damage, no marks, no sign that anything had been there at all. That should have been reassuring. It wasn't. I checked my phone. 6:18 a.m. No missed calls, no new messages. Signal slightly stronger than last night, enough to load a weather update, and nothing else. Clear skies, cold morning, nothing unusual. I stood up slowly, joints stiff, and walked over to the front door. My hand hovered over the handle for a second before I turned it. Daylight hit me immediately. Real daylight. Flat, honest, and wide open. The street looked exactly the way it should have the night before. Houses spaced out, fences, a couple of parked cars farther down the road. No movement, but this time it felt like early morning quiet, not absence. I stepped outside. Cold air, dry and sharp, filled my lungs. It grounded me in a way nothing inside the house had. For a few seconds, I just stood there, letting the normalcy settle. Then I noticed something that didn't fit. The dirt in front of the door. There were marks. Not footprints, not exactly. Uneven pressure points in the ground, spaced inconsistently, as if something had stood there for a long time, without shifting its weight the way a person would. I stared at them longer than I meant to. Then I stepped back inside and closed the door. "Doesn't matter," I muttered. "You're leaving." That was the plan. Simple. Get in the car, drive out, forget the whole thing. I grabbed my bag, checked the room one last time, without knowing why, and headed back outside. The car started on the first try. Another small relief that didn't feel like enough. I pulled away from the curb and headed back toward the main road, retracing the path I had taken the night before. Left at the end of the street, straight past a row of houses, then right where the road opened up. It should have taken less than a minute. Instead, I passed the same blue house again. I slowed, looked in the mirror, then back ahead. Same street, same angle, same house. "That's not right," I said quietly. I kept driving. At the next intersection, I turned left instead of right. Different direction, different approach. 30 seconds later, I passed the blue house again. This time, I stopped the car completely. Engine idling, hands tight on the wheel. "No," I said. "No, that's not happening." I put the car in reverse, backed up to the intersection, and took the opposite turn. Straight, no turns, no changes. The road stretched out ahead of me, empty and flat. For about 20 seconds, everything felt normal. Then the gas station appeared. Same one, same canopy, same man standing inside, watching. I hit the brakes harder than I needed to. The car jerked slightly before settling. I sat there, staring at the building. "I just came from there," I said. But the road behind me didn't match the road I had driven. It wasn't the same distance. It wasn't even the same angle. I checked my phone. GPS loaded slowly, then locked in. The map showed a straight route leading out of town, east, exactly where I was trying to go. The blue line didn't loop. The road did. A cold, steady realization settled in. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the folded paper. The rules. My eyes went straight to the bottom. 3:12 a.m., 3:17 a.m. That's when you can leave. His voice from the night before, calm and certain. I looked back up at the gas station. The man was still there, still watching. I put the car in park and stepped out. This time, the bell rang when I opened the door. A small, sharp sound that felt almost aggressive in the quiet. The man didn't look surprised. "You stayed," he said. "I tried to leave," I replied. He nodded once. "And?" "It loops," I said. "The roads, they don't go anywhere." "They go somewhere," he said, "just not where you want them to." I stepped closer to the counter, the paper still in my hand. "You knew this would happen." "Yes. Why didn't you say something?" He tilted his head slightly. "You wouldn't have believed me." That was true. I hated that it was true. I set the paper down on the counter and tapped the time window. "This. 5 minutes. That's real?" "Yes." "And if I miss it?" "You wait until the next one." "Next night?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. That was answer enough. I ran a hand through my hair, frustration starting to push through the fear. "Okay, fine. So I leave at 3:12. Problem solved." He shook his head. "Problem started," he said. I stared at him. "What does that mean?" "It knows you now," he replied. A familiar line. Different voice. Same weight. "The knocking," he continued. "You heard it." "And the voice," I said before I could stop myself. His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes sharpened slightly. "It said your name." "Yeah." "You didn't respond?" "No." "Good." A word didn't feel like praise. It felt like a temporary reprieve. I leaned against the counter, suddenly more tired than I should have been. "So what is it?" He looked past me, out the window, like the answer might be standing somewhere out there in the daylight. "Something that looks for attention," he said finally, "and once it gets it, it doesn't stop." I didn't give it anything. "You came to the door." I didn't open it. "You spoke," he said. "That's enough." A quiet, sinking feeling settled in my chest. I thought back to the moment on the couch, the whisper. Not real. It had felt harmless. It hadn't been. "What happens now?" I asked. He reached under the counter again and pulled out another sheet of paper. This one was different. Longer. More detailed. He slid it toward me. "Now," he said, "you survive tonight." I looked down at the new list. More rules. More specific. More final. And this time, I didn't question any of them. I didn't read the second list at the counter. I folded it once, then again, and slipped it into my jacket like something sharp I didn't want to touch yet. The man didn't stop me. He just watched, the same way he had when I first walked in, like he already knew how this would go. "Anything else?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "Don't try to understand it tonight." "That's not helpful." "It's the only thing that is." I held his gaze for a second longer, then turned and walked out. Daylight didn't feel as solid anymore. The sky was still wide, still clear, but the town had shifted in a way I couldn't explain. Same buildings, same streets, but now everything felt arranged, like it had been set up for a purpose I wasn't part of until now. I got back in the car and drove without thinking, letting the roads take me where they wanted. They showed me the same places, over and over. Gas station, diner, post office, a church with no sign out front, a playground with no children. Every path curved back into the same small loop, no matter how I tried to break it. Left turns, right turns, doubling back, stopping and restarting. It didn't matter. By noon, I stopped trying. I parked outside the blue house and went back inside. It felt smaller during the day. Less like a shelter, more like a container. I set my bag down, took out the second sheet, and unfolded it slowly this time. The font was the same. The tone wasn't. Rule 1. Do not make unnecessary noise after dark. Rule 2. Do not use any device that emits light between 9:30 p.m. and 3:12 a.m. Rule 3. Do not approach the door under any circumstance. Rule 4. If the knocking changes pattern, move to another room immediately. Rule 5. If you hear movement inside the house, remain still. Rule 6. If you see a shadow that doesn't match an object, close your eyes. Rule 7. If your name is called more than once, cover your ears and do not listen. Rule 8. At 3:12 a.m., leave immediately. Do not look back. I read through them twice, then a third time. Each rule felt less like advice and more like a line I couldn't afford to cross. I spent the rest of the day preparing. Not because I wanted to, because I didn't see another option. I unplugged everything in the house, covered anything that might light up, checked every window, every corner, every door. I picked a spot in the living room where I could sit without facing the entrance directly. Time moved strangely again. Too fast when I wasn't paying attention. Too slow when I was. By the time the light outside started to fade, my chest already felt tight. I sat on the couch before it got dark and didn't move. At 9:29, I turned my phone off. At 9:30, the house went still. Not quiet, still. The difference mattered. I kept my hands flat on my knees, breathing slow, focusing on the physical world in front of me. The edge of the table, the texture of the couch, the faint outline of the wall. Anything that kept me anchored. The first knock came earlier than the night before. 2 sharp taps, higher than before. Different. Rule 4. If the knocking changes pattern, move to another room immediately. I stood up without thinking and moved down the hallway into the bedroom, closing the door behind me as quietly as I could. The air felt colder there, thinner. I sat on the edge of the bed and waited. The knocking followed, not on the front door, on the wall. 3 taps, then 1, then silence. My heart started to race, and I forced myself to slow my breathing, counting each inhale, each exhale. Minutes passed, or seconds. I couldn't tell. Then I heard something inside the house. A soft shift, like weight settling where it shouldn't be. Rule 5. If you hear movement inside the house, remain still. I froze, every muscle locked in place. The sound came again. Just outside the bedroom door. A faint scrape. Then, nothing. My name came next, clearer than before. Closer, right on the other side of the door. It said it twice. I covered my ears immediately, pressing my palms tight against my head, eyes shut, breathing shallow and controlled. Rule 7. Do not listen. The voice kept going. I couldn't hear the words anymore, just the rhythm of it, like someone speaking through water. I stayed like that until it stopped, until the silence returned. When I opened my eyes, the room felt wrong. Not different, wrong. The shadows didn't line up the way they should have. One of them moved, just slightly, not attached to anything. Rule 6. Close your eyes. I did, instantly, and held them shut, counting slowly. 1, 2, 3, up to 10, then 10 again. When I opened them, the shadow was gone. The knocking didn't come back. The voice didn't return. The house settled into a silence that felt finished. I didn't trust it. I stayed exactly where I was, watching the faint outline of the door, waiting for something else to happen. Eventually, the floor began to vibrate. Faint at first, then stronger. A low, steady hum rising up through the structure of the house. The train. I stood up immediately. No hesitation this time. I moved down the hallway, through the living room, to the front door. My hand closed around the handle. I paused for half a second. Cold air rushed in. The street was empty. The vibration stronger now, rolling through the ground beneath my feet. I stepped outside, pulled the door shut behind me, and walked quickly to the car. No running, no looking around, just forward. I got in, started the engine, and pulled away. Left, then straight. Gas station, diner, post office. All of it passed once, and then it didn't repeat. The road opened up, wide, endless, real. I didn't slow down, didn't check the mirror, didn't question it. I drove, and I kept driving. Even now, I don't stop completely at night, not unless I have to. And if I ever hear knocking where there shouldn't be any, or my name spoken just a little too carefully from the other side of a door, I don't answer. Because I learned something in that town. The rules aren't there to scare you. They're there because something is waiting for you to ignore them. And it only needs you to be wrong once.